I'm back, Lynbrook. What's up? It's Mr. Bale here, once again, talking about the mock election for 2020 here at Lynbrook High School. So the results are in, and at this point we do know some of the outcome of the actual 2020 election, but some things are still to be decided. But anyways, forget about the actual election. Let's talk about our mock election, shall we? Let's take a look at some of the results. First, let's talk about the propositions. For Proposition 16, you can see a relatively resounding rejection of this particular proposition. So it was in the view of the students that we should not reintroduce affirmative action policies back into various government entities. For Proposition 18, you can see a very strong yes decision here. Over 500 of you voted in terms of supporting the right of 17-year-olds to vote if they turn 18 by the next general election. And then finally for Prop 25, once again a relatively strong support on this referendum for a removal of cash bail in favor of a risk-assessed system. So we'll see how, of course, those actually pan out in the actual election. Now let's turn our attention to the congressional race. For California's 17th, you can see here a dominating performance by Ro Khanna, who took 4 out of every 5 votes home, got over 80% of the vote, and so he is your choice to be re-elected to Congress in the 17th District of California. And finally, let's look at the presidency.
Let's see. I know who I want for all the judges and propositions, but president, that's a stumper.
Joe Biden, major winner here, not surprising here at Lynbrook High School. What's very fascinating is if you actually look at these percentages, despite the fact that there are 4 years difference between the mock votes, Donald Trump carries 15% basically in both elections, both in 2016 and in 2020 with your votes in the mock vote. So different students, different time period, but very similar result. So Joe Biden is the big winner there. Trump comes in second with 102 votes, and then you also see the third-party candidates also gain votes, the highest of whom was Rocky de la Fuente Guerra. Remember last week when we talked about voter turnout and that America's voter turnout was actually pretty low compared to other developed nations? Well, we see a similar thing right here at Lynbrook High School. For instance, let's take a look. We potentially could have had every student vote because every student received a vote last week. However, there were a lot of other students that were actually doing other things during the homeroom time. For instance, freshmen and Link Crew leaders were actually doing a separate activity during homeroom last week. So we'll at this point discount them from being potential voters. So when you take all of them out, you can see the number of voters that actually voted in our mock election was barely over 50%. That, of course, brings up the question, what were those other people doing? I don't know. Maybe some of these things, perhaps. Who knows? But again, the election was optional. It wasn't an assignment you had to do. Just like voting in real life is not something you have to do by law. Now, compulsory voting laws are on the books in a variety of nations, and that can, of course, dramatically raise the number of people who do vote. Now, if we actually consider the fact that everyone did get a ballot and on their own time they could have voted, the VAP actually drops to less than 40%. So what does this tell us in the end? Well, it tells us, of course, that voting is something that is optional, but it is a civic duty. Now, this is just a mock vote, but we hope that as you go on into real life and actually have the opportunity to participate in democracy, you'll consider the words of Ambassador Walter Annenberg, who simply said, "Citizenship is every person's highest calling." That's something I believe in, and I hope that you will join me as a voter in our great democracy. Friends, thank you so much for participating, and have a great one.